Hi, and welcome to TESOL with Micky and Ide. I'm Micky, and today we are continuing our conversation about Lev Vygotsky and the theories of his that we can apply to TESOL. So far in this series, we have looked at sociocultural theory and looked at the kind of key concepts of that. We have also looked at language and how it can be a tool for thought. Today, we are going to look at maybe my favorite and possibly also the best known theory of Vygotsky, which is the zone of proximal development, also known as the ZPD. I love this theory so much because we can start to apply it to our TESOL practice really quickly, and it's also super useful to help us think about planning and how to work with our students in class. So if you're interested in this, then stay tuned to this episode. Okay, so what is the zone of proximal development? So Vygotsky described the ZPD as the distance between what a learner can do independently and what they can do with the help from, say, a teacher or a peer. Wording varies with this across translations, but the core idea remains consistent. If you want to go and check it out, then you should go and look at Vygotsky, 1978, and the title Mind in Society. Think of a time where you have given your students work and it has been too easy for them and they've completed it really quickly. This is not in the zone of proximal development. Think of another time, and we've all done this one, where we've given our students some work and it's way too hard. They can't do it, they maybe become frustrated, or even they become really disengaged. This also is not in the zone of proximal development. However, there is a space between this where we can give them some work which they can do with our assistance or the assistance of peers in the classroom. And with this guidance, they can learn and they can be successful. They can't do it alone, but they can do it with some help. This is the zone of proximal development. Let's think about the edges of the zone of proximal development. So on one side, you have what the learner can already do, and they can do that independently. On the other side, you have what they cannot yet do, even if you help them. And this is really important. If we help our learners to do something by doing it for them, they have not developed. So therefore, we are not doing our job. The zone is between these two things where learning and growth is possible with help. Importantly, this zone should be dynamic. So this means that it should move, and of course, it should move in a forward direction where development continues. If it's moving in the wrong direction, something is really up, and we have to look at our teaching practice and think, what's going wrong in this situation? But equally, if it's also stagnant, what's wrong? Why is this learner not developing? Is it too easy? Is it too hard? Are we not meeting their needs? What's going on here? So the zone of proximal development in this case can give us an indication of what's going on with our learner. So it should be dynamic and should be moving in a forward direction. Let's think about how we can apply this concept of the ZPD to our TESOL practice. I quite often find that it's useful to think about it at two levels. The first is the macro level and the second is the micro level. If we take the macro level first of all, this is the stage of our practice where we're planning. So maybe we are really high up in the macro level and we're thinking about planning a curriculum or planning a course, or it could be closer to the lesson planning stage as well. So for instance, when we are planning on the macro level, we have to make a lot of assumptions about our learners, estimating where they should be at. And we can do this with needs analysis, we can do it with a diagnostic test, we could do it with some exam results like an IELTS or a TOEFL. And these are all data points that give us an idea when we're planning of what the overall zone of proximal development should be. We can also take that down to the lesson planning, and we can think about, okay, in this lesson, what are my aims? What am I trying to achieve with my plan? And thinking about the zone of proximal development here is really helpful. So how can my lesson help to take them from one point to another. The second level is the micro level, and this is where you're actually in the classroom with the students. So at this level, the ZPD is something that you notice and respond to in real time. So when you're monitoring your students, and if you're not familiar with that term, that's when you are kind of keeping an eye on the students. You're maybe walking around and seeing how things are going. You can make adjustments to learning and teaching practice. You might see that a pair isn't working well together, so you might want to move people. You might see that someone's finished and you might want to give them something else to do. You might see that some students are struggling and you might help them or get a peer to help them or do something in that moment. This links really closely to what scholars later called scaffolding, something which I'm going to talk about in the next episode. The final point that I want to make about the zone of proximal development in this episode is really the affective and social factors that can play a part in learning when you take this approach. So language learning isn't just shaped by tasks and activities, it's also shaped by relationships and emotions in the classroom, especially when you are trying to make this kind of learning happen. For example, pairing students is something that matters a lot. Some people get the best out of each other and some people just don't get on, and that's okay. When we are teaching adults, especially, they bring a lot of previous experiences with them to the classroom, and this can give us a lot of success in the classroom, but they can also take a lot of negative experiences with them. So perhaps they have been shamed in the classroom before. There can be neutral experiences as well. So for instance, perhaps they've never done group work before, or perhaps they don't see the value in it. So these are all really important things that we have to think about when we are trying to get our students through the zone of proximal development. It's a very active way of learning, but it's not just active for the learners in the classroom, it's also necessary for you as the teacher to be active as well. To sum up, the zone of proximal development is the space where learners can do more than if they were alone. It should be dynamic in a way where it's moving forward. It doesn't have to be fast, but can just be a gradual movement. However, we need to remember that it can be affected by social and cultural factors, but it's also a really useful way to think about how we plan on the macro level from a curriculum, the course, the lesson itself. It can help us think about what our aims are and whether they are achievable, but it can also help us in the classroom when we have the learner right in front of us as well. In the next episode, we'll be looking at scaffolding and some practical strategies you can use to support your learners through the zone of proximal development. If you found this episode useful, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. More importantly, if you think that someone else could benefit from this content, please share it with them. Take care, and I shall see you next time.